When I built this workbench, two spots on here that I needed to counterbore and then drill holes into. So one example would be where this insert is in the table here. That receives a hole down clamp. So I had to use a Forstner bit in order to counterbore a circle, a hole there. Then over at the end of the bench, very commonly on workbenches, we want dog holes so that we can do stuff like that. So I needed to drill those holes. And what that led me to was using a handheld drill, not my drill press, because there's no way I could have lifted this whole bench top up onto the drill press table. So I want to show you 4 different techniques you can use with a handheld drill in order to get holes drilled pretty darn well handheld. First off, we're going to start with a Forstner bit, and this is the way I did the counterbore for those mounts in the bench. And the benefit we get from a Forstner bit is that the diameter is so large, we really can just monitor the progress by watching the hole that we drill. Got a piece of cherry here, and as I start the hole, what I'm going to do is just look at the hole I'm creating, and I can see by the depth of cut if I am or am not going in reasonably square. So to really exaggerate this, if I'm coming in at an angle, I'm getting this instead of this. So one approach to a handheld drill and square holes is to watch as the cutting spurs engage the material, that's happening uniformly, and then I'm making small adjustments with my hand on the drill to compensate as I need to. That works pretty well. Now, if you want to take the making small adjustments with your hand component out of this, we can go to something like this. These are available online. They're available at woodworking stores, even some home centers. Most companies that make them call them drill guides. So the deal is that it's got a drill chuck into which I can put a bit, a couple of guide rails. I'm going to mount my drill up here because turning that by hand and drilling a hole would be really hard to do. Once I've got the drill up here, basically this becomes much like a handheld drill press. And it offers a couple things. With the guide rails on here, keeps me pretty darn perpendicular to my surface. There's also a stop on most of these, so I can move that up the guide rails in order to control my depth of cut. Let me show you another thing here. Very commonly, we can make an adjustment in the angle by shifting the guide rails like this. And that'll help you do a hole at an angle to a surface. Now, a couple things. It's not, we don't really want to say this is a handheld drill press because they don't offer that level of accuracy. Most of these are pretty good at tolerances and accuracy, but they're not great. You might have seen when I first fired up the drill, there was just a little bit of wander in that bit. That's a result of a little bit of play in the system here. So they work pretty well, but they're not a complete substitute for a drill press. But sometimes when you're doing this handheld, you have no choice but to go to something like that. Now on my bench for those big dog holes, because I own a drill press, I made my own drill guide. I knew I was going to use a 3/4 inch brad point bit for the operation. So what I did is, at the drill press, I drilled 4 holes in a pretty substantially thick bore. This is just a little over 2 inches in this direction. What I'm doing there is I'm creating a drill guide. When I wanted to drill my holes then, I laid out their location on the bench with the bit in my drill. I pushed that through the guide, got onto the center point of the hole, clamped this in place, and then drilled the hole. Now the reason I did a number of holes is it because as we drill subsequent holes, the bit does tend to run and rub against the side of the hole, and that changes its tolerance a little bit. So when I drill a hole and then I feel that guide getting sloppy, then I go to another hole for the next one so that my tolerance remains good so I don't drill this thing crooked. You want to make sure that you make the guide out of a hardwood, not a softwood. When you drill, we want to use something like a brad point bit or a twist bit. This wouldn't be a good spot to use a Forstner bit because we don't have enough bearing surface against the side of our guide hole to really help us with a Forstner bit. Now for my last trick, we're going to reflect on this a little bit. We're going to use a mirror to make sure that the bit is going in perfectly square. Let me change my setup a little bit, clean up my bench, and we'll show you exactly how this one works. For our final approach on perfect holes with a handheld drill, we're going to use a mirror. So this might look a little funky because you're going to see me here, then you're going to see me here. I'm not really upside down, it's just because we're using a mirror. Here's the way this works. It's a plastic mirror, so I could drill holes in it. I've got a 1/4 and a 3/8 hole, so I can do this with a couple of different drill bits. The way the mirror helps you is that we get the bit through the hole and then watch the reflection in the mirror, and when the bit is crooked, like it is right now, the real bit and the reflection don't line up. Make sure you're checking it from all directions. So we want to check from the side, we want to check from the front. When everything is lined up, then you're ready to drill. Keep watching that reflection. Make sure you're nice and straight. So the mirror allows you to see what you need to see in order to make sure that this hole, just like the other ones that we drilled, are all coming out nice and square. So 4 great approaches that you can use in your shop to drill good holes with a handheld drill when you can't use a drill press.